You're listening to Beyond the Measure, episode 23. Listen as I, a young composer, and my wife, a young choir director, interview other music educators in order to gain insight into their own success in the classroom. We have a lot to learn, and we want you to learn with us. No matter your age, ensemble, or experience, this is the ideal podcast for music educators, composers, and students alike. So join us as we go beyond the measure. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Measure, a podcast where we interview music educators in order to gain their insight and share that information with you so that you can have encouragement and other great ideas that you can implement into your own classroom. We have a very exciting guest on the show today. If you are in the band world, especially, you've probably heard of him, especially in the small school band side of things. He is a composer named Luke McMillan. He's based here in Abilene. Luke McMillan is a composer, arranger, and designer for the marching arts. Luke has been writing music professionally since 2005 and has composed and arranged full-time since 2015. Luke's music is regularly heard at numerous competitive circuits, including BOA, U.S. bands, and multiple local and state-sanctioned events across the country. Luke's music has been played by several state marching band finalists and medalists around the country and has been described as achievable and fun for the performers and entertaining and engaging for the audience. Before becoming a full-time composer and arranger, Luke worked as a band director for 11 years at Wiley High School here in Abilene. During his time at Wiley, Luke designed the shows for and co-taught the Wiley Pure Gold Marching Band, which advanced to the state marching contest several times playing his music. Luke also directed the Symphonic Band, which earned consistent sweepstakes awards, and the Wiley High School Jazz Band, which earned Best-in-Class awards for most jazz festivals they attended. Luke is a 2003 graduate of the University of North Texas, holding a Bachelor of Music degree. While attending UNT, he played in the marching band, concert band, and nationally recognized jazz lab bands. Luke lives and works here in Abilene. This is a very good conversation that Kara and I have with him. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Even if you're not in the band world, this is still going to be applicable to you because he really talks a lot about basically how his goal as a composer is to provide value for music teachers, for educators, especially teachers that might be in a scenario where they can't necessarily, they don't necessarily have the resources and the money that a lot of schools in the larger cities have, especially down here in Texas where marching band is such a big and many times necessary thing to have in order to kind of please administrators and stuff like that, even those that aren't in the music world. So I really enjoyed this conversation. We both did, and especially for me as a composer, he's also got a really good business going, and so it was fun for me to learn more about that side as well. So this is going to be a great episode for both music educators and composers alike. So sit back and enjoy this episode with Luke McMillan. Well, Luke, thanks for taking time out of your morning today out of your Saturday to be with us on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Of course, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So could you start just by telling us a little bit about yourself, kind of what you do in the music world, and then we can kind of get into your story and how you got there.
Sure. So I own Luke McMillan Music Company. We are a publisher of marching band shows for high school marching bands all over the nation. We primarily focus on small, developing, rural schools, and that's mainly just because I got my start here in Abilene, and most of the little towns around here, they're just smaller schools that need music that fits them, and after writing for a few years, that's just sort of the niche that I developed, and I love it, and I embrace it, and it's been really fun. So yeah, we do just the music. By the way, we don't do the visual side, but we do music for competitive high school marching band shows here in Texas and all over the nation.
That's amazing. It's something maybe I'll someday try to dip my toe into, but as anyone that's been listening for a while now knows that, we both have definitely more of a choral background, and I actually have some orchestra background as well, but band is definitely the one I'm least familiar with when it comes to writing. So we'll have to have a whole separate conversation about writing for band at some point later.
Sure.
And so then can you just tell us about, and you can get as specific as you want, how did you just first come to do music initially, and then kind of what was your journey all the way through to finally getting where you're at now?
Sure. So, one thing that's interesting, especially after listening to some of your other episodes, most musicians come from musical families, and I did not. None of my family was musical at all. But from a very early age, I remember when I was 5 years old, I got a little keyboard synthesizer, a little bitty small one. And I remember when I was like in kindergarten, I would watch The Wizard of Oz, and I would pause it and like run to the keyboard and try to pick out Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And so I played with that when I was a kid, and my parents sort of knew that I was musical, and so that's why they got me that. And then when it came time to be in band, I was like, of course I'm going to be in band. This sounds really fun. And so I started playing trumpet, and then when I got into middle school, I was somewhere, and it came to my attention that there was another kid my age that was writing music. And I'm like, hold on, I thought you had to be dead to be a composer. Like what? Like I thought composers, I thought you like wore white wigs and you were born in the 1700s. I thought that's the prerequisites for being a composer, right? But no, so I started writing music, just for fun. And I pilled around with some stuff in high school, and then in college I wrote for our basketball band and stuff like that. And then when I got my first teaching job, I offered to arrange the marching show. And my boss at the time, who's still a really great friend of mine, he was dumb enough to say, sure, sounds good. And so I wrote my first marching show, and other schools around here were like, oh, cool, can you do that for us? I'm like, yeah, I guess so, sure. And then from there, I just started slowly but surely building a library. At that time, this is like mid, probably like 2005, 2006, something like that. At the time, the marching band copyright licensing world was really complicated to navigate. And so I wrote a bunch of original marching band shows, just original music. And so that afforded me the ability to post the scores on my website and post recordings, whatever I wanted to do. And so I started developing a library of music, and it filled a need, and that that there wasn't a lot of great stuff for because small marching bands, that there's you could be marching, half your band could be 7th and 8th graders, if not more, and in these 1A and 2A schools. And I mean, that's just a really unique skill set. If 1 year a kid is learning their instrument, and then the next year or two they're expected to march and play a competitive show on the field, there's some pretty specific music that needs to be tailored to students like that. And so I just really enjoy studying that and understanding what can make students like that successful. And that's sort of what got me here. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. And where did you say you went to school?
I went to high school here at Abilene Wiley, and then I went to college at North Texas.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. One of the really cool things about what I think is really advantageous about Abilene location wise, we were just talking about this before the interview, just in general, how Abilene there's a lot more of a musical scene than you would think at first glance, for one thing. But also, as far as location goes, you're still, because Texas is a big state. Anyone that doesn't know that, Texas is a very big state, and where Abilene is located, Abilene is it's like just west of the central section of Texas. And so you have on one side, you have all of West Texas, which is a lot of rural, a lot of small towns, like kind of what you're talking about. But then just 2 hours east is, Fort Worth and Waco and all those places. And so you still have a lot of big schools as well. And so you really have a lot of access to see a variety of different scenarios, and kind of how, whether it's for band or choir or whatever, just how music is done in those areas. So
right. And as far as my clientele, this area is really a hotbed for marching bands, specifically pertaining to my clientele, because one difference in Texas and other states that in our experience is in Texas, it doesn't matter how small the town, how small the school, there's probably going to be an expectation that you have a marching band, you take them to contest, and you do well, and you represent the school well. And so that's sort of unique. And also, like you said, just a location, between here and, west to Midland or east to Dallas Fort Worth or north to Lubbock, like there are lots and lots of really great small communities that support their bands, support their students, want to have a successful program. And so yeah, it's a really cool area.
Yeah. Last year I worked in Clyde, and I just got to see the like community support, like their marching band, and like Clyde has a fantastic marching band. And so that's definitely, I've definitely seen that. Yeah,
100%. Football is big in Texas, and I think maybe because of that, I think marching band gets also gets a really great amount of attention from that. And I think it's just I think people around here just really love their communities. Especially when it's a small town. It's like people just really love their community, supporting the students in the community, supporting the town. And I really love that vibe. One of my favorite things is when I'll drive through a town that I've written for, and they've put up a billboard like congratulating them on their state marching band results or something like cool. that. Because I'll occasionally I'll see that, and it's just so cool to see the support of the communities with stuff like that.
Yeah, that was something I had to get used to since I'm originally from Austin, and I've always lived in kind of suburban areas, really close to large cities growing up, and so I wasn't as used to that sort of small town. Small towns are very passionate about the football games for their high schools because, I mean, that's kind of all there is, right? And so, but that's okay. And so when I moved to Abilene, I made a lot of trips from Austin to Abilene, which that's like a 3-hour drive, and it's a lot of ways just through country and small towns. And so I was not used to seeing like you drive under a bridge and someone of like graffitied on the bridge, like stop them, bears or what, like
I know the town you're talking about. You're talking about Goldthwaite.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah. And I was just thought, oh wow, that's pretty cool. That that's kind
which Goldthwaite is a longtime client of ours, by the way.
Yeah, really. Okay, yeah, that's amazing. And I think it kind of puts into a really really good perspective on how you're really offering such an important service to the students and those communities. It really makes a big difference.
Well, I have a question. So you started just by yourself, right? Just composing music for marching bands. How did you grow your company into what it is now?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, you're right. It was just me. I started writing just as something to keep out of trouble during the summertime. And so I did that over the summers, and then that got to where I was starting in April and May and writing through the summer. Then it got to where I was starting in February, writing through the summer, and then eventually just got to where it was a year round. As soon as one marching season's over, I'm talking to my clients, planning for the new one. I'm modifying existing shows to fit their instrumentation. It just became a year round thing. And so I guess that sort of the first step in the story is I was a assistant band director at Wiley, and it just got to the point to where I had 2 full-time jobs, and I sort of had to decide, well, which one of these 2 jobs, do I want to do? And honestly, I honestly considered just giving up the writing and just teaching because I loved that. And I still, there's aspects of it that I miss all the time. And so, but I decided to do the one that, flexible schedule, help as many people as possible. So I decided after 11 years teaching, I hung it up and I just did the composing thing full time. Part of my story that a lot of people know, at that time when I in my writing career, there was another gentleman that was based in West Texas. Well, no, he was living in Colorado, but he sort of had his roots in West Texas, that was doing a lot more writing than I was. As a retired gentleman by the name of Barry Hurt. And Barry was working with a lot more bands than I was. And at that time, he said, he was a retired band director. And he told me, hey, listen, Luke, I don't, like, I retired because I didn't want a job anymore. And this whole, like, arranging thing is turning into a job. Mm-hmm. And he's like, and my kids wouldn't want to take this over. Is this something, like, would you be interested in, like, buying my library of music if I just wanted just to, you know, get out of it? And I said, yeah, sure, we can talk about that. And so that process, it took about a year or two, but I ended up, based on Barry's request, I bought his library of music. And so his clients then at that point worked with us. And at that point, we sort of started sharing when that purchase went through. It was cool because lots of people were like, well, I've been playing Barry Hurt shows for a couple of years, but maybe I'll look at one of yours. Or like they might have played my shows like, oh, I never thought about looking at Barry Hurt's, but I'll look. So it was a really great sort of synergy of different ideas and stuff like that. So at that point, we basically became by far and away the most major distributor of small school marching band music in Texas. This is around 2016, 2017, something like that. After that, had a couple other writers that approached us and said, "Hey, listen, I have some music. Would you guys mind?" And it was sort of like a consignment type thing. I didn't own their music, but some other writers came to us, and we will distribute their music on their behalf. Around that same time, too, I was getting to where just the administration side of it, the invoicing and the contracts and all that stuff, and plus the writing, it was just getting to be a lot. And so I asked a good friend of mine who had actually just student taught with us at Wiley. He had just graduated. He's a Hardin Simmons grad. David Spruill. He's a Hardin Simmons grad, played in Cowboy Band. I asked him, like, hey man, listen, I'm gonna need some help eventually, especially when I get Barry's library. And so he helped me on a part-time basis. He did a few different things. He was actually the band director at Eula, a little community just in between here and Clyde. He was the band director there for a couple of years. And then once we got even busier, I talked him into like, hey, could you come work for me full-time? And so he left his job at Eula and he works for me full-time now, and he has ever since then. And so, yeah, so now our team, David and I are full-time. And then I have a couple of composers, arrangers that we distribute their music on their behalf. And then we have a couple of contractors that we will use to do some music edits here and there. Christian, you mentioned that you're on Sibelius. I grew up on Finale, and anytime I've tried to use Sibelius, I come this close to throw my computer out the window just because it's completely opposite.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
If you know one, the other one just doesn't make any sense.
It's true.
And so more often than not, sometimes in all of Barry Hurt's music is on Sibelius.
Oh.
And so if we have to crank on those or pop the hood and do something, then I'll usually get a friend of mine like, hey, could you help us do some edits on this or whatever. So that's basically the extent of our team and our staff. So.
And so what does the process look like of, you know, let's say there's a small school band director that's listening to this right now, and I'm sure they've probably heard of you, but they're just not sure. Well, maybe I might want to try to, you know, look into some shows from Luke McMillan. What's the process on that?
Honestly, it's however they want to do it. You know, a lot of our clients will come to our website. They can go to our website and they can hear all of our shows from front to back. They can't, some of the scores are online, some they'll contact us for them, but some will come and they'll do their own thing. They'll say, hey, listen, I'd like to see a score to this show and this show. And then they'll come back later and say, okay, we want to do this one. It's like, okay, perfect. Sometimes they might come to us and say, hey, listen, I'm sort of at a loss. I don't really know what to do. I just took over this job. Mm-hmm. I have no clue, what I'm inheriting here.
Yeah.
What should I do? It's like, okay, let's get on the phone. Let's talk about this, you know, and we will work with them and we'll say, okay, hey, listen, how about let's try this. Let's have this as a plan B. Once you see who shows up in August, you know, and we can work very, very hands-on with our clients. And those are two ends of the spectrum, and everywhere in between. Might have a client that says, hey, listen, I'm looking at these two shows. Which one do you think? Here's our instrumentation. Here's a video of what we did last year. Which one do you think would be a better fit? We are 100% here to help, and just however that best fits for the band director, we're happy to do it. And sort of, I guess, to answer the question you were getting at, what advice would I have for a band director who maybe takes over a program, they're not sure what to do? Contact us. We can walk them through every step. We can give them suggestions. We can, and not just on music, just in general. What in the world do I do? How do I start the year? How do I, we have pretty much seen it all at this point, and we're happy to help with anything. So.
I want to add in a point here that I think is super cool about what you're doing to any composers that might be listening to this, is you're really showing that as a composer, you're not just a business and you're not just selling them something, right? You're actually trying to be a resource for educators. And that's such an important thing that composers need to remember, is like you can really provide and be there, as a, somebody that's supporting educators, and that really makes a big difference. What are some of the things that, and we don't have to go into specifics, but you work with a lot of clients, a lot of small school bands. What are some of the more common issues that you see that they're having to deal with, that whether you're able to solve or not, that you just see, and that you recommend? What advice would you give to bands that are kind of going through that kind of stuff?
Wow, what a great question. That is a really great question. So common issues that small bands deal with. I would say the most common issue that I see with small bands is just probably getting your kids to rehearsal. That with small schools, those students are so awesome because they are typically doing. They're on the varsity football team.
Yeah.
They're the lead snare drum player.
Yep.
They're showing goats next weekend at the goat show. They're as soon as football is done, they're the starting center on the basketball team, and as soon as that's done, they're the pitcher on the baseball team. And so they're just doing everything, and so it's sometimes it can be tricky, working all the scheduling out, but and like I said, I was never in that position. I was an assistant at a fairly bigger school, and my head guy that I worked for, he was very, very flexible, and I really think that's really the name of the game, is like, be flexible. It only helps to have your coaches and your administrators love you, and so if you're saying, no, I'm gonna have this kid from here to here, and if you don't, that's not gonna help anybody. It's like, okay, cool. So you need him until this time on Tuesday. Okay, cool. Maybe we could back up our rehearsal. Maybe we can move it 15 minutes later, just to or well, I know I'm not gonna have this kid for this time to this time. Okay, I should maybe not give that kid a solo. Maybe we should plan on somebody else, playing the solo in the show. So just being flexible and trying to roll with the situation and flexibility, stuff like that. As far as like what we see a lot, the biggest issue, and that's why we're here to help. I would say probably one of the biggest issues with any music educator is over programming. Picking literature that's just right beyond the grasp, and it's a really delicate balance of like, okay, if I play this super easy music, number one, my kids are going to be bored out of their minds. Number two, they're not going to learn anything. They're not going to get any better,
Yeah.
But then on the other end of that spectrum, if you give them something that they just can't do and will never be able to do, they're frustrated. They're, and the, not the achievement just isn't possible, and your group sounds bad, and so that's just a really delicate balance. And my advice always to young teachers, I've said several times already, contact us and we'll help. Young music educators, it is imperative that they ask for help from other music educators around them. And from my experience, other music educators are clamoring to help with stuff like that, would be ecstatic to help a young teacher avoid mistakes that they've made.
Yeah.
And like I told you the other day, as a fellow composer, I would be overjoyed to help you not make some of the several mistakes that I've made. And so I think that's the same with educators. Young teachers need to ask, and sometimes you'll see, maybe young teachers just don't know that that's a possibility, and so they don't talk to anybody. But music educators who have been around love helping with that, and I would say that's one of the biggest things.
Let us take a quick break real quick so I can tell you a little bit about this podcast's primary sponsor, which is Christian Fortner Music. That's right, my own music business. This is the primary platform that I use to sell my music, and you can find it at www.christianfortner, that's Fortner, music.com. Now, you may be thinking, oh, I don't know, this guy is a young composer. Does he really know what he's doing? Well, to be honest, none of us composers really know what we're doing, if we're being completely honest with ourselves. But if you want to kind of get an idea of what my music might be like and if it might be a good fit for your ensemble, you can actually get a free copy of music from me. That's right, a free piece of music. This isn't just a study score. This is full score and parts that you can use for your ensemble to perform completely for free. And you can do that by signing up for my mailing list. So if you go to my website, Christian Fortner, that's Fortner, music.com/mailings, you can sign up for my mailing list right there, and you'll get a link in your inbox where you can select a piece of music for either choir, string orchestra, or band. And I should also mention that the choir piece, it can be either an SAB, SA, or TB version. So for any of you out there that are looking for SAB, SA, TB, specific voicings like that, then this might be a good opportunity for you. So yeah, that's about it. Again, if that's something you'd be interested in, just check it out on my website. And now we can get back to the episode. I want to ask about kind of a little bit more when you were making that switch from being a teacher and you were writing those shows, and then you made that switch to, okay, I'm going to go into this full time. What exactly did that really, what did that look like, and how did you know that it was the right time or that kind of, as all that was happening? Because for me, as someone that's in a separate full-time job and I'm wanting to go into composition, that's something I'm working towards. But there might also be some teachers out there that have kind of maybe just started as like a hobby, kind of like what you did, and they're starting to grow as well. And so then they're starting to think, oh, well, maybe I should consider doing this full-time if that's what I want to do as well. Kind of, how does that, what advice do you have people in those sort of scenarios?
Sure. I have had several friends who have done this, and I think there is certainly something to be said about doing the scary thing. Take the leap. Just do it, and everything will happen. My case was a little bit different. I sort of lucked out in that I was sort of at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
There was a major need for what I was doing. And when I left, it was the obvious choice. Like teaching was taking up the majority of my time for less income.
Yeah.
And so it was really obvious for me at that time to make that decision. But I've had several friends who, it was a giant leap of faith for them, and they decided, what, I'm going to do it. And there have been things like that for me, hiring a full-time employee.
Yeah.
At the time that was scary. It's like, well, what if I can't pay this person? What if something happens? And, there have definitely been several of those, but I have found that every major sort of leap that I've taken like that has paid off. And some of those in the form of, this was a huge mistake, but I learned from that mistake.
Yeah.
And I know what to do differently next time. Some of the leaps of faith have been like that. But no, for the most part, I just think, if you want to, if it's something that you want to do, the very first step is believing that it's possible. Mm-hmm. And as long as you conduct yourself in your life in that way, then I think the right pieces will fall into place.
Yeah, you cannot achieve what you cannot believe.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, and the other thing with that too, I feel like is even if you do make that leap and maybe it doesn't work out the way you wanted, and for some reason you find yourself in a position where you have to go back to getting a full-time job or even a part-time job or something like that. That's totally okay. And I honestly think it would look even it would even look good when you walk into that interview and they say, well, what are you doing before this? Well, I took a step of faith and I tried creating a resource for people, and I think that still looks really good to people that are looking to hire you. So
100%.
So it really works out for sure.
Yeah.
So another question that there might be in the heads of some small school band directors are out there. Obviously there are so many bands in the world, especially in the small ones, and maybe a lot of them I'm sure there's a lot of people that they're in a situation where they feel like, well, we're such a small school and we're out here in the middle of nowhere, and so maybe they look at a really successful composer like you that's doing this stuff and they think, well, it'd be nice to go and try to get a show from them, but I don't even know if they would even have time for me, right? Like, what would you say to people that are maybe unsure about even taking that step and asking about, how can I even get a show going?
Yeah, sure. Well, so first of all, the majority of our clients come to us looking for a show that's already done. It's like I'll only write like 8 to 10 brand new shows a year, and the vast majority of our clients will come to us looking for a show that's already done. Now, we for the shows that are already done, we will customize those. If they say, hey, listen, this has a trumpet solo, but I have an all-state alto sax player. Yeah, we can change it. This was written for 4 bass drums. We only have 3. Yeah, it sounds great. This has a synth part, but we won't have a synth in the pit. Okay, cool. Yeah, I can cut it out. This shows it's like 6 minutes and 45 seconds, but we typically like to stay around 6:15. Could you cut 30 seconds out? Yeah, sure. So we will customize those, and and we basically have unlimited capabilities to help bands like that. As far as if you find a show that you like and you just need a couple tweaks here and there, we are always able to help bands like that. And small bands, the budgets can vary greatly as far as what their capabilities are. But I mean, we always tell our clients, hey, listen, we only work with small school bands. That small school marching bands. That is the only. So we've seen all the different budgets. We can help you with whatever you need, and so no, I mean there's not a band that's too small or too in the middle of nowhere or anything. We have seen some of the most extreme situations, and our goal is to help everybody. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And one thing you told me the other day when we were talking on the phone, and I knew this happened, but I didn't realize this was kind of what you're doing was kind of unusual a few years ago. Because, both, I mean, me and Kara, we come from, I'm from Austin, she's from Fort Worth, huge marching band programs. And you were talking about how, every year they have their own brand new shows created for them, with, people that's what they do. Right. And you were saying that's, I mean, obviously that's just not doable for a lot of small schools. And I never made that connection that's having pre-made shows just available for people to have, like that was a new thing. So I think that's a really cool example of how you've kind of innovated the kind of how that works and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. But like you said, most big competitive bands that are, going to the 5A, 6A state marching contest, UL state marching contest, or going to BOA Grand Nationals in Indianapolis, that they are having brand new shows every single year designed for just this year. Their job is to just wow the judges, like, oh man, I've never seen anything like this before. Whereas with the smaller schools, it's more about just cleanliness, clarity, and yeah, not too long ago they were kind of like, Kara, when you buy music, you buy it's already done, it's on the shelf, But at the same time, we're sort of in between that, because like if you were to, like, I'm assuming you get your music from J.W. Pepper, or if you were to call Pepper and say, hey, so the soprano's a little bit too high on this, and could you combine the tenor? They'd be like, they hang up on you. But whereas for us, we would be like, no, like, let's talk about it. Tell me about it. What exactly is going on? So I think we found a really great mix of like, okay, this show was designed for a small school marching band just like you, and if it's sort of close, then we can customize it to where it's an exact fit for what you're doing.
Yeah,
That's very cool.
Yeah, and I feel like that's an aspect of the industry that might be I think it is slowly changing, especially now that we are in a world where it's so much easier to connect with the composers and the arrangers, and also on top of that, for individuals to start like kind of making those adjustments to music. It really just requires so much more communication because it's possible on, those different possibilities. I just saw in like last week, there was like an article from ACDA, and they had interviewed Reginald Wright and Laura Farnell, two choral composers. And one of the questions, I thought this was a great question, is they asked them, well, what would you say to people that are looking to like transpose your music like a few steps for their ensemble or one of the voice, something like that, and both of them said, oh, I want you to be able to do that. I want my music to be as accessible to you as possible. And one of them even said, yeah, that'd be great. And actually, I'd hope you'd actually ask me, just so I know that that's a need, and I'd love to do that for you. So and that's something that I've always been open to, and I've assisted some people that were needing that done on other pieces of music as well, and so that's something that I'm curious to see how it. Hopefully, I think we're kind of continuing to kind of get a better, little more flexible mindset. I think going forward, hopefully.
Sure, you said something really important, and that is when the composer said, well, I'd actually hope that you let me do it.
Yeah.
So I have several opinions about that. Number one, my clients will ask me a lot of times, like, hey, could you send me a finale file? I'm like, well, yeah, I can, but how about you just tell me what you need?
Yeah.
A couple of reasons. Number one, you have got so much on your plate. Why are you in your office jacking around with a finale file? Like, no. Tell me what your problem is. I guarantee, and sometimes I'll actually say this, I guarantee you I am way faster at finale than you are. Like, tell me what you need. I can solve your problem for you so you can get back to doing what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, it's a great learning experience for me. That is probably, so I asked a prominent composer a few years ago. I was looking at, how do I get better, all this kind of stuff. I was sort of considering maybe getting a master's in composition. And this one composer said, you know what? The best learning experience for me is like hearing my music live.
Yep.
He's like, go and hear your music live as much as you can. I would say that's probably been the second best learning experience for me. The number one best learning experience is when my clients call me and say, listen, this isn't working. We need to change this. Okay, well, what's going on? Well, this isn't doable at all. Yeah. It's like, oh man, I never thought about that. And so getting that feedback from my clients, I might have had a phone call 7 years ago that I don't remember now, but I'm still implementing things like, oh, nope, never going to do that again. Well, why don't you do that? Oh, I don't remember. Well, it's because I had a phone call 7 years ago. This guy's like, listen, this is never going to happen. That you need, but also playing my music or hearing my music played live, as far as like ranges, I was just at a clinic just a couple months ago. And I was like, ooh, I shouldn't write tenor saxes that low in this style. It's like I should have done this instead. But yeah, no, that feedback from clients of like, hey, listen, we need this change, and this is why we need it changed. Okay, interesting. I'll keep that in mind for the future. So
yeah, there is something to be said about, and this opens a whole other can of worms for another time, but that whole discussion about, well, you could spend 2 years at school in a classroom taking notes, or you could spend 2 years in other people's classrooms hearing your music done, right? If you're able to, but obviously there's a lot more, special minutia within that. It's not that easily said, but so kind of going off of that. So then my next question for you is, what would you say to teachers that have students in their ensembles that have expressed interest in composition, or they are writing music, kind of like how you started writing music when you were a teacher, and they're starting to ask questions about composition, and they're wanting to find more opportunities for that. What advice would you give to them?
Man, I get this question all the time, and again, like, just do it. Go to MuseScore. It's free. You can hear it played back. Put something in. If it sounds good, great. If not, change something. And then if that sounds good, great. If it still doesn't sound good, change something. And I mean, there's no rules. It's like jazz improv. You know, it's like there's no wrong notes. There's no rules. Do what you like. Do what you think sounds good. And just try to hear it played live. If you put it in the MuseScore and you like it, you wrote this little trumpet duet. Cool. Print it off. Pass it out to your friends. Listen to it. See how it sounds. I mean, I can remember in college basketball band, I wrote something and just put it in a stupid key. I don't know. B minor, B major. I forgot what it was. But I passed it out, and immediately I was like, "Oh, that was the worst mistake of my life." And so immediately, no, and then like I did a new version, came back. Okay, now we're in G minor. How about this? You know, and so just passing it out, seeing what mistakes you make. Hey, so we can't play this note. That's too low for our instrument. Oh, really? Oh, oops.
Exactly.
Just stuff like that. Just do it and go for it.
Yeah, and to the teachers, like please encourage that to
100%.
to your students. When I can't remember if I've shared this before on the podcast, but one of the biggest reasons I was able to, one of the biggest steps that I took was when I was in my high school choir and I wanted to enter this composition contest in Austin, and I was using MuseScore, but they were needing it like in Sibelius, in a Sibelius file. Keep in mind, I'd barely even used Sibelius before, and I hadn't even written like a full orchestra piece before, but it was for like full symphony orchestra. And I asked my choir directors, and I was like, yeah, so I was kind of wanting to try entering this contest, and it has to be on Sibelius, and the computer in the choir room has Sibelius. Would it be okay if? Yes, of course, please stay after school, work on it. Like they were so encouraging of that, like immediate. And so that's what I did, is I just stayed after school and worked on that little piece, and I have still never released it to the world because it was one of those first ones that I don't know if I will, but that was such an important thing for me to have that opportunity to even work on music, and then again just to have an ensemble there to work with if I wanted to. Just while we're on that subject, shameless plug. You mentioned MuseScore. For any young listeners that are interested in composition, MuseScore just released their newest version. It's now MuseScore 4, and they completely redid the sounds, like the sound samples on there, and they sound so much better than they used to. So anyways, just kind of a fun fact there.
Choral or orchestral, or what specifically?
I didn't hear the choral sounds, but I heard all the orchestral ones and like the piano, and it sounds so much better. Obviously, never going to be perfect, but again, a huge difference compared to what they used to be. So anybody out there looking for free music resources, MuseScore is just getting better each year. So.
Yeah, I've never used MuseScore just because I've been on Finale for so long, but I've seen and heard great things. It seems, seems like a lot of people like it, and especially, I mean, it's still free, right?
Yep, it's still free, and that is how I originally started before I even had Sibelius, so it's very important for sure.
You said that you write like 8 to 12 or 8 to 10 like compositions a year. What does that process look like?
Yeah, great question. So I'm actually really fortunate now because there is just like about 15, 20 years ago or so, there wasn't really a such thing as custom marching band arrangers, like to the extent as it is now. Another thing that didn't exist in such a wide scope, even like 10 years ago or so, I'm not exactly sure. I can't really speak as far as like my experience of working with them, but there is just designing a marching band show is a major process. Now for my clientele, it isn't as major as some of the other ones, but like LD Bell is going to the Texas State Marching Contest, and they're going to BOA Grand Nationals in Indianapolis pretty frequently. For a band like that, it will usually start with a person called the program designer or maybe program coordinator, and that's basically the architect of the entire show. They will usually design the visual color palette, as far as like the props, the colors, the flags, the guard costumes, And in a lot of cases, they'll also map out some of the music choices too. So for the past several years, I've worked with a program designer that I work with a lot. And we will say, hey, listen, so what about doing, this type of show, this type of theme? Like, yeah. Let's look into that. Let's do that. And so he will then get lots of source material, the music that we're going to arrange, whether it be orchestral stuff, pop stuff, movie scores, classical music, whatever. And he'll say, yeah, so for the first build and impact, I'm thinking about maybe doing this. And he'll send me another YouTube link. Like, what if we did this and so I'll work with him on basically orchestrate, mapping out the entire show. And at which point we'll say, and there might be very specific things. Okay, this part is definitely this. Now the ballad, here are some choices. You can either do this or this, whatever you're sort of feeling, And so I love doing that because for me, the blank canvas is extremely intimidating.
Yeah.
I used to do that. 10 years ago, I open up a blank finale document. What should I do? And that usually that's hard. That's really hard.
Oh, yeah.
But if I open up a brand new score, brand new template, and I know exactly what the next 6.5 minutes of music are going to be, it's so much easier. I tell my clients all the time, a coloring book is way easier than a blank canvas
Yeah,
for me.
wow.
And so that is these days that is 100% how that starts with a program designer, working with him on what music we're doing, where it's going to go, all that. And we take lots of things into account, copyright licensing prices, just pacing. Is the tempo going to work? With marching, all that kind of stuff. So that is how that process starts with a program coordinator. And my job is a little bit unique, compared to yours, Christian. There's a really great documentary series on Netflix about design. And one of my favorite episodes, they interview Tinker Hatfield, who's one of the original designers of the Air Jordan sneakers.
Oh, yeah.
And he said this thing, and I had to rewind this, and I've since watched this little segment of this documentary several times. He draws a distinction between art and design. He says, now, for an artist, creating art is the ultimate form of self-expression. This is something that they think is cool, that they want to listen to or look at, and they're expressing themselves in the highest form. Design, now there is art in design, but when you are designing something, you're making it look cool on somebody else. You're making it sound good for somebody else. And you're not expressing yourself. You're designing a tool for someone to be the best version of themselves. Yeah. And that is 100% how I view my job. I am designing a tool, not unlike someone designs a power tool, or someone designs a running shoe or a tennis racket, or something like that. I'm designing a tool for this person to be, or this group of kids to be the best versions of themselves as they can.
That is such a good illustration, because you see a lot of with composers. I think you see a lot of that discussion of well, that conversation of, okay, what is going to be accessible to this ensemble and making it fit, right? Versus, well, how can this be in its truest form? And, it has to have this super special instrumentation or whatever, right? And there's a place for both of those. And early on, you really have to, or maybe not necessarily early on, but eventually you have to make the decision of, well, which category. Maybe it can't be both. Sometimes it can, right? It can fit in the design and the art category.
100%.
But a lot of times it can't. A lot of times I'll finish a piece, or I'll be working on a piece, and I'm realizing, okay, well, I'm definitely going into the art category, right? This isn't going to be as accessible to some people. So I can keep going down that path, or maybe it's good to go ahead and finish off that way. And then you really have to think about, okay, well, what is most important to me for what is this for? Is this just for myself, or do I want this to be for other people? And that's kind of where you have to decide, well, where can I make adjustments and maybe make it more designed as a tool for other people? And there are really beneficial things for both. And I think I've said this before, in college, and I think it's good that you really use that time to, as a composer to find your voice and your writing style, and you're just creating art, right? And you're learning about different kinds of art and the different techniques and everything. But now that I'm out of school and I really want to get, I'm working a lot on making it accessible. Now I have much more of the thought of the design side of things, and, how can I make this work? And at first, to me, it was kind of like, but I really just want to, I want it to be exactly how I originally heard it and express myself, which I can still do, but in a weird way, it almost brings more fulfillment to know that, okay, well, I'm doing this more than just for myself, and there's going to be a kid out there someday that's going to be able to play this, and, because of the changes I'm making now. And I think that really puts a whole new spin on the value of what you're doing as a composer.
100%. Yeah, my goal when I'm writing is, I want to make this just as clear as possible, and to where I want the compliment to this band director to be, I don't want somebody to say, man, those were really great arrangements. Who did those arrangements?
Yeah.
I want somebody to come up and say, this is the best your band has ever sounded. I've never heard your band sound that good before. That way, that my version of it is completely transparent, and there's no distractions of like, oh, there was this really cool slide whistle thing. It's like, well, no, like, just, like, I just want to get out of the way. That's not only music design, but I'm really passionate about just visual design, typography design, things that, just, you don't really notice the design. You notice the message, and that's sort of my design philosophy. A brief nerd out time. I have posters in my studio of my favorite typeface, which is Helvetica. And there's actually a documentary about Helvetica.
Really? I'm familiar. I've used it before. I'm familiar with it.
The typeface. And it was designed to be just the most simple, clear typeface, to where, you get into others like, Papyrus and Comic Sans, and it's like there's a lot of attention drawn to the typeface, whereas Helvetica's goal, like, you don't even notice that there's letters there. You read the message, and that's sort of my design philosophy, just like get out of the way, make it as simple and clear as possible, and that's going to help the performer. Yeah,
for sure. I think that's why I use in my scores, I use Avener. I don't know how you say it, but it's another one of those kind of similar, very simple. Very simple. That's really appealing for sure. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to discuss before we wrap up?
Not that I can think of, other than I'm available to help for you and any of your listeners. If I can help in any way with composition or music ed questions, or anything like that, we're always available to help in any way that we can. Just Google my name, you can find my website and contact us, and we're always glad to help, no matter what that might look like.
Perfect. Yeah, and we'll have all of your social media and your website linked in the description of this episode. Yeah, I guess that's it. Luke, thank you so much for being on the show with us. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
And if you're listening, be sure to follow Beyond the Measure on social media. Our Instagram it's beyond
measure.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Beyond the measure.
All together was already taken, I guess.
All together was already taken, or it looks too jumbled. Perfect. So follow us on Instagram, and if you haven't already, please leave us a rating and review on whichever platform you are listening on. That'd be very beneficial to us. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. See you later.